So again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education, and I've been using Play Attention with my clients since 1996. So for about 29 years, I've used Play Attention with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So hopefully my experiences using Play Attention with lots of different individuals will give you a better understanding of the program and the process. Now, I know many of you are here today because you wanted to learn a little bit more about our summer cognitive campout that we're running right now. And everyone who starts their Play Attention program will be enrolled in that cognitive campout. So I will get into that a little bit further so you can understand all of the great benefits that come along with that. So please do ask questions about that if you have additional questions, but just keep in mind I will review that program a little bit more in depth later in the presentation. So now as I look at this list here, I noticed that there are some names that look familiar. You may have attended a webinar in the past. And you know that when we do webinars, we typically talk about different areas of executive function. So we've talked about organization, we've discussed prioritizing, we've discussed indecision, task completion, staying focused and being able to start and complete in a timely manner. We've talked about rejection sensitive dysphoria. We've talked about time management. So there are a lot of different areas that we've covered. And when we do these webinars, we always talk about the topic, but then we always provide tips and strategies. And we want you to have those tips and strategies in your toolbox. Those are good to have. However, at some point, we have to get to the root cause and start developing skills so that all of those tips and strategies we provide will work for you. I give an example of one of the adult clients I was working with not too long ago. And she said, everyone keeps looking at me and saying, just write a to-do list. And she said, I can write a to-do list. That's not the problem. The problem is I get to the end of the day, even though I started the beginning of the day with a beautiful to-do list, she said I get to the end of the day and nothing's done on that to-do list. And so how many of you can relate to that? You can raise your hand. You can use the raise your hand icon, or yeah, so many of you are raising your hand that you can relate to that. And that is so common. And you might get sometimes frustrated. Sorry about that. You might get frustrated because you think, I'm seeing all of these tips and strategies, and it seems like they work for other people, but why don't they work for me? So if you really think about it, let's just take the to-do list as an example. If we take that to-do list as an example, you can write a to-do list. You know how to do that. But in order to execute that to-do list, we first have to work on your memory, improving memory, so that you remember you have a to-do list. We have to work on your ability to direct and sustain your attention so that when you start number one, you're able to sustain your attention until you complete number one. We have to work on filtering distractions so that when you start number one, you're not distracted by everything else in your environment. We also have to work on impulse control so that you don't just start number one and impulsively jump down to number three. And we also have to work on being able to stay in the present moment so you don't let that internal dialogue derail you. So there are so many skills that are required for implementing that strategy, that to-do list. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. How can we get to the root cause and start developing these cognitive skills so that you can implement those tips and strategies and improve overall executive function? You may also think about your child, because I know many of you right now are going to reviews and at school and you're talking about the IEP or 504 plan. And if your child has a 504 plan, then you know it's a series or a list of accommodations most often. And again, accommodations are great. I want your child to have those accommodations because those do play a role in success. However, we have to simultaneously develop skills. I mentioned that my background is in education. So there was a time that I was a classroom teacher, and I often saw the accommodation that we were going to give the student longer test time. And in theory, that's a good accommodation, but only if we're simultaneously developing skills, right? We have to teach that student how to, again, direct and sustain attention, how to process the information, get that information from their heads down to the paper, work on impulse control so that they're not just rushing through the test just to get it done. We have to work on filtering distractions so that even if they're in a somewhat quiet environment, they are able to filter the distractions around them. We have to work on that working memory so they can actually apply what they know. So there are so many skills we have to work on and have to help develop so that longer test time doesn't just end up being longer time to daydream. So that's what we're going to really focus today. We specialize in one thing, and that one thing is we help you reach your goals. So you are all here for a reason. So go ahead and type in the chat box if you would, so we can share a little bit. Why are you here today? Are you here because you're an adult and you really want to start developing certain skills so that you are more productive during the workday and you're not having to bring so much work home every night? Maybe you're here because you have a child who is really bright but struggling to reach their full potential. Or maybe you're a professional and you're looking to help your clients improve executive function. You may be here for all of the above. Oftentimes, I work with clients who have ADHD themselves, but also work with clients and they have their own children who have ADHD. So go ahead and share. Why are you here today? Karen says, want to learn to help clients improve their executive function. Excited to learn more about treatment options. Gilda's here for her child. Sean says, wants to be more productive and help. Oh, and help my kids be more productive. Maria, improve time management with less emotionality. Andrea, I'm sorry, Andrina, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. I want to be more productive, both professionally and personally. Wendy says homeschooling, and I want to help her with executive function. Great. Elizabeth says, I need a program to help not only myself, but my three children who are also identified as ADHD. Excellent. So you see, I can't read them all, but there are so many of you here looking at the program for yourself or your children or your clients. And a few of you mentioned that you're here because you want to not only improve your own executive function, but help your children. And keep in mind, that's really important to remember that we can customize a plan for every family member. It is very rare that we only work with one family member. Usually it is at least one parent, at least one child, if not the entire family. So that is really important to keep in mind. And that's what's exciting about our summer cognitive campout, because we're going to really focus on extending the cognitive training to everyone in the family. Uh, Adrina says, I definitely need assistance with improving executive function. Thanks for getting my name right. You're welcome. So everyone is here with a goal in mind. And so what we can do is take your goal and customize a neurocognitive training plan to develop those skills. And we were the pioneers in neurocognitive training. As I mentioned, I've been using play attention since 1996. It was actually our founder, Peter Freer, who started researching different attention training techniques back in the 1980s when he was working with individuals, both children and adults, with attention difficulties or weak executive function. And he thought there's got to be a way, a better way to help improve these areas. So he started looking at different attention training techniques. And he came across the work that NASA was doing with their pilots and astronauts. And what he found was that Dr. Pope and Dr. Paulson were using feedback technology, meaning they were monitoring the brain states of their pilots and astronauts while they were actually doing their simulator training, their flight simulator training. So if the astronaut or the pilot was very attentive, then their job was very easy. All of the controls were automatic almost, so that everything was easy. But if they got stressed or anxious, distracted, they weren't as attentive, then their job became more difficult. All of those controls became very sluggish, and it was harder to do their job. So they were learning through immediate feedback. They were able to see their attentive state in real time and see how a lack of attention affected them and affected their job performance. And that gave them an opportunity to start developing self-regulation and really control their attentive state. So the founder of our company thought, that is brilliant. If I can allow my clients to see their attention in real time while we work on skills that we need every day, then I have a comprehensive program. And that is the very foundation of play attention. What makes us unique and effective is what we teach and how we teach it. Play attention is the only program available that integrates feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping to provide you with the most comprehensive approach available. And so you see on my screen the body wave armband. And some of you may have seen this already on our website or maybe in some previous webinars. This is the body wave armband. On the back, there are 3 sensors. And when I slide those sensors, when I slide that armband on my arm, now those sensors are monitoring my brain activity that tells us how attentive I am. And then that information is given over to the computer where I'm allowed to control all of the cognitive exercises just with my mind, or more specifically, my attention alone. And I receive constant and immediate feedback as to whether or not I truly am focused and paying attention. And that's a really important first step in the learning process. Because right now, if you think about when you may be looking at your child or your partner, or you may hear this yourself sometimes. If you're looking at your child, let's say, or your clients, and you say, I need you to pay attention. I really need you to pay attention. What do they typically say back to you? Or maybe you're hearing, I need you to pay attention. What do you typically think or say? I want to see if you're hearing the same thing I used to hear. Right. Many of you are saying what I used to hear. I am, right? I am paying attention. And you may really think that you are. Your child truly thinks that he or she is paying attention, but you just haven't developed what it takes for you. So now what we're doing is we're taking that very abstract concept of attention and making it concrete and controllable. Now you actually see your attention, you feel what you're doing, and you're allowed to practice not only attention, but all of these other cognitive exercises that are typically weakest for individuals with attention difficulties, but required for executive function. So, what's important to remember as we're talking about the program is that no matter what you're working on, whether it's attention stamina or task completion or working memory, you have to be paying attention. If you're not paying attention, then the activity will stop or the character will go in the wrong direction, and you have to focus back in order to continue. And the reason we do this is because we know the very first catalyst necessary for brain change is attention. You can have a great teacher, you can have a fantastic life coach or counselor, but if you're having a hard time paying attention to that individual or the process, it's hard to get maximum benefit. So that's why we make certain that no matter what you're working on, you are actively engaged. So when we talk about um, developing cognitive skills and actually improving executive function, we are talking about sparking brain change, right? Creating new neural pathways. So when we talk about sparking brain change doesn't just occur. There are certain catalysts that are required in order to spark that brain change. And those catalysts are incorporated into play attention. The very first catalyst necessary for brain change we just talked about, attention. In order to spark that brain change and start creating those new neural pathways, you have to be actively engaged in the learning process. So we take care of that by constantly monitoring your brain activity and giving you that real-time feedback. The second catalyst is challenge. Now, I know that everyone here, all of you, your children, your clients, we would love to come into a session and be 100% successful, right? But if you're 100% successful at something, you're not sparking any brain change. You have already arrived, you've mastered it. There's nothing you really need to learn. So we have to provide challenge. So when you put this body wave armband on, we're only looking at your best ability to pay attention, and the bar is set there. If you're able to reach or exceed that level of attention, then in the background, we raise the bar just a little bit. Now you have to be that much more attentive in order to be successful. So we're adding that challenge, right? So if you are able to reach or exceed that level of attention, you can activate the exercise. If you maintain it, then we raise the bar by just a little delta. Now you have to be that much more attentive. Now, the opposite is true too, because I know some of you are thinking, oh, but I don't want my child to be frustrated because he's already frustrated at home or at school. And that's true, right? We have to have challenge, but we can't be 100% frustrated either because you won't learn anything. So if you are able to reach and exceed that, but let's say now you're getting a little fatigued and you're not able to reach that same level of attention, then we bring you back down to your last successful level and gradually build you up. So that auto adjust algorithm is constantly keeping you at a challenging yet success-based pace. The next is deliberate practice. So that means when you come into a learning situation, you have to have a goal, right? And so Sheer Genius, our artificial intelligence, is going to constantly set mini goals for you so that when you log in for your session, Sheer Genius is going to select the exercises for the day, but also set a mini goal. So you may hear, yesterday you completed this with 70% attention. Today, let's try 72%. And if you do that, you earn a point. The point goes into your reward system. So we developed Play Attention and incorporated all of these catalysts required for brain change. So they're all automated for you. You have all of the catalysts required: attention, challenge, and deliberate practice. Now, as I mentioned, we've been doing this integration of feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping for about 30 years. But Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is that integration that Play Attention does? Is that important? Or can we simply give you a series of cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games or brain training apps, and get the same results? So they had three different groups of individuals, all identified as ADHD. The first group received Play Attention, so they had full integration. The second received just cognitive exercises, so brain games on the computer, no feedback technology, and no behavior shaping. And the third was their control, and they received no intervention at all. And at the end of the study, the Play Attention individuals were the only group that showed global improvements in all areas. So that means, and this is a really important part of this, global improvements in all areas. That means they transferred and generalized the skills that they had learned. They didn't just get better in the games, but they actually transferred and generalized all of those skills in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only individuals that if they started the study and were on medication, because some of them were on, some of them were not, but if they were on medication and in the Play Attention group, those individuals had an average decrease in their medication, where the other two groups had an average increase. And that goes back to skill building. If we can help you develop the skills, there may be less of a necessity to mask those symptoms. So really good studies. They did the pilot, then they were funded to do the full study, and then they did a 6-month follow-up in order to make certain that even after the training ended, that they were able to maintain those skills, which they were. Now, I do want to show you play attention in action so you get a good understanding of that feedback. But before I share the actual system and share that feedback technology with you, I do want to take a quick poll because I want to make certain that we are all on the same page and that everyone understands so far. So here's the poll. You should be able to see it on the screen. If you don't, you can just type in your response. But the question is, what does this body wave armband monitor? Remember, we've been talking about it so far. What does this body wave armband monitor? Is it A, eye movement, B, breathing, C, brain activity, or D, FM radio? What does that body wave armband monitor? Is it eye movement, breathing, brain activity, or FM radio? All right, I'm going to close the vote here. And all right, I'm going to end it in 3, 2, 1. All right, 80% of you responded correctly. So this is really important that you understand. This body wave armband is monitoring brain activity, indicative of attention, indicative of how attentive I am. That's important because it's not eye movement, it's not breathing. And the reason we have to monitor brain activity and show that to you in real time is because attention originates in the brain. It doesn't originate with your breathing. It does not originate with your eye movement. Those things can help. But if you close your eyes right now and I continue talking, you can still pay attention to what I'm saying. So we're not monitoring eye movement. We're not monitoring breathing, although breathing will help if you take a deep breath. A lot of times, even my young students start learning that if they take a deep breath, they do even better with their attention. So those things help, but to really give you immediate feedback as to your actual brain activity, we have to, or your attention, I should say, we have to look at the brain because that's where it originates. So that body wave armband is monitoring your brain activity. Now, let me go ahead and share with you the actual exercises. Now, know that when I am sharing the play attention system and the interface and the games, I can't really see your questions. So I won't be answering your questions until the actual I get past this and go back to the slides, okay? So please do keep your questions coming because I will answer those questions, but know that I cannot see those questions right now. So this is the dashboard, the main dashboard. Now keep in mind, again, you won't need all of them. That's where the customization comes. So all of you, whether you're a professional client or a home client, you will be assigned a dedicated focus coach. That's one of our coaches here on staff to assist you every step of the way. And we're going to help you customize each individual's plan based on their particular needs. So what is important to remember is that no matter what you're working on, every single exercise, working memory, attention stamina, filtering distractions, it's all brain enabled. It's all activated with your attention. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this very first exercise, which is called attention stamina. This is going to teach me how to direct and sustain my attention to low stimuli at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or my colleagues in the workplace. And I can choose from different characters, but one is this diver. Now remember that body wave armband is monitoring my attention. The very first thing you're going to see when I click play is a transition screen. So in a moment, you're going to see your game is loading. And this is just helping me transition from our conversation into the actual exercise itself. And then once we get past the game is loading screen, I'm going to turn my volume down just a little bit so you can hear me. Once we get past the game is loading screen, you see my character at the top of the screen and my attention meter is white because I'm not paying attention. I'm distracted. I'm talking to you. So now I'm going to stop. I'm going to pay attention to my task at hand. Once I'm paying attention, I'm going to be able to swim him all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. Okay, so I'm going to stop, focus in. That's as low as he goes right there. Now, notice what happens as soon as I distract myself again. Immediately, he starts to float up. And distraction can be a variety of things. It could be daydreaming, it could be anxiety, it could be someone walking into the room and I can't filter that noise. Whatever it may be, I get that immediate feedback. Now I know I have to control that behavior, control that daydreaming, focus in. So you see, it's kind of like a piece of exercise equipment for the brain. We're working areas right now that are weak. And when we can provide you with that constant and immediate feedback regarding your attention, you're then able to develop the self-regulation and self-monitoring you need in order to recognize when you're paying attention, recognize when you're not paying attention, and more importantly, when you're not paying attention, you'll know how to correct it because you've been given an opportunity to practice it, right? You've been given an experience. You know, a lot of times, if you think about how we try to teach attention, we try to teach attention by saying, pay attention, sit still, eyes on me, pay attention. We try to tell you or your child what to do. Now, that doesn't really work, right? Because you're just trying to tell them what to do, but they haven't experienced it. They don't really know what that means. So now you're providing an experience. You see your attention, feel what you're doing, and you practice it. Now, you noticed our graphics. That's about as exciting as they get. All of our graphics are very simple. They are very low stimuli. And I'm sure many of you know why. The reason we do this is because if I give you something high stimuli or high interest, you can pay attention to that. If you give your child an off-the-shelf or regular video game, they are wired to pay attention to that high stimuli where it may be hard to get them away from it. So we don't need to teach how to pay attention to entertainment or high interest. What we need to teach is what's more challenging. And that's how to pay attention to low stimuli, much like the classroom teacher or the workplace that cannot possibly compete. So now after I finish that exercise, you notice that all of my data is stored for me. So you see, I worked for 1 minute and 29 seconds. Of that time, I was actually paying attention 30% of the time. And my recovery speed, which is from the time I lost my attention to the time I regained it, is right around 12 seconds. So now Sheer Genius, the artificial intelligence that I mentioned earlier, is going to use this information to not only document progress, but also use that to set those mini goals I mentioned, right? So my mini goal tomorrow when I log in will be, yesterday you completed this with 30% attention. Today, let's try 32%. And if you do that, you earn a point. The point goes into your reward system. So Sheer Genius is documenting progress, setting mini goals, tracking your rewards program, and then also looking at certain benchmarks. Because you notice here, there is a skill advancement. There's a bronze, silver, and gold medal. And when you reach certain benchmarks, we're going to move you from bronze to silver to gold. And when we move you up, we're going to tie in more processes required for executive function, such as processing speed, impulse control, distractors, and mental flexibility. So it gets a little bit more complex as you move up. There are times you're going to have to respond using the mouse or the keyboard, but you're still driving everything with your attention. Okay? All right, now I'm going to go back to our slides here. All right, so I hope that makes sense. I hope that everyone understands how powerful that feedback is, especially if you're working with a teenager or an adult where you feel like all of this is outside of your control, right? I can't pay attention. I never pay attention. And now you're rewarded within the first couple of minutes, really, for paying attention. And you learn from that. Now, again, as I mentioned, there are several different cognitive skills, and all of those cognitive skills, we will look at each individually and set up your profile accordingly. And keep in mind, when we're developing those cognitive skills, the end goal is to develop the foundation required for strong executive function. Okay. Now, many of you here are very familiar with that term executive function. But for those of you who are not as familiar, you can think of executive function as kind of like the CEO of your brain. It's what allows you to control your attention, your behaviors, your emotions. It allows you to plan and prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. So it's a set of mental processes. Okay. And those mental processes tend to be challenging for individuals with ADHD or weak executive function. And that's what's important to keep in mind, that no one is born with strong executive function, but we all have the potential to develop it. And that development starts right after birth and continues through our mid to late 20s. Unfortunately, we expect everyone to have strong executive function by the time they hit middle school. And that doesn't always naturally happen, right? Many of you know that. There are a lot of factors that can inhibit that development, one of which is ADHD, can be autism, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury. There are so many factors that can inhibit that development. And so it's important what we keep in mind through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with the right challenge and the right feedback, you can create these new neural pathways. Now, I'm just going to check here to just a few comments that were made. Parvin says you're addicted to the sound. Is that the soothing sound of the ocean? Karen, are the training programs different based on age, or are they created based on a baseline measures? So that's a good question. So when we're looking at these cognitive skills, Karen, I think you'll get a good understanding that whether you're 6 years old or 66 years old, these are the cognitive skills that you need to develop in order to improve executive function. The challenge comes personally when we're monitoring your personal progress, and we're going to challenge you accordingly based on your strengths and weaknesses. So although you may be using similar programs for a variety of clients, everyone's program is going to be customized along the way. Okay. All right. So now these are the different modules that are typically included with the core program. These are the foundations of executive function. So we work on attention stamina. That's the exercise I just showed you, teaching you how to direct and sustain your attention at will. Visual tracking, that's a great one, especially if the teacher's ever said, he does great when I stand right next to him, but as soon as I walk away, he's out the window and out the door, and then he has that diffused attention where he's paying attention to a little bit of everything. So we work on staying focused and visually tracking. Task completion, that's a big one. That's for the homework that should take 15 minutes, but takes 2 or 3 hours. Or if you're an adult, a lot of my adult clients will say, I start a million things, I finish nothing. So being able to start and complete. Short-term memory, that's the ability to remember dates, names, facts. Filtering distractions, both auditory and visual. Because, of course, knowing that attention deficit is really a misnomer, isn't it? There's no one with a complete deficit of attention. The challenge is you have fantastic attention. You're just paying attention to bits and pieces of everything. So what we want to help you develop is that ability to focus on what's important and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. And then we also work on transfer and generalization in all of the exercises, but we have a really exciting program called Academic Bridge. And that is where you will be wearing the body wave armband while doing real work activities. So it could be office work. My client here is taking a course online. You also may be doing homework with your child. Notice that my client is wearing the body wave armband while doing his coursework. Now, we're monitoring. This is where I'm asking him to take all the skills he's learned within play attention and apply them. So as long as he's paying attention to his coursework, or for you, it might be a report, or for your child, reading. As long as he's paying attention, he's going to hear from the computer, good, great. If he starts to drift, he'll hear focus. And then he knows he's not in that state he needs to be in order to process and complete. So this is where we're developing that self-regulation while doing actual work tasks. And we can use this in a variety of ways. One I love is one of my adult clients. She's in her 70s and she's a day trader. So she uses it while she's day trading. So she only makes her trades when she's at her peak attentive state. So keep that in mind that we can adjust what you're doing while working on academic bridge. So those are the foundations. Then we have a variety of cognitive exercises that we can incorporate. These are considered our masterclass modules. Usually these are add-ons, but with our summer cognitive campout, you're going to have access to all of these at no additional cost. Working memory and auditory processing, the first two, are really our most popular masterclass modules. So working memory for us as adults, it's, you walk into a room, you went in there for a reason, but you can't remember why. That is a lapse of working memory. So it helps your child and everyone with problem solving, reasoning. We use working memory for everything we do. Auditory processing, that's if you have challenges following through with multiple step verbal instructions. Hand-eye coordination is more about small motor control, so handwriting, keyboarding. Social skills, that particular module is great if you have a child or an adult who has a hard time picking up on social cues. And usually it's simply because they're not paying attention long enough to the social cue to really recognize happy, sad, angry, process, and then respond. So that is a fantastic one to help develop those areas. Spatial memory is remembering where things are located. So if you're constantly losing your keys or your wallet or your backpack, that's a great one. Uh, Mental math, that's for younger individuals. So first grade, second grade, addition and subtraction math facts. Mindfulness is another one of our really popular ones. And I love this one because we hear so much about how mindfulness helps with the symptoms of ADHD and anxiety, and that's true. However, we can't look at someone with ADHD and anxiety and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, because mindfulness is hard. It is hard for all of us, but especially if you have that running mind. So what we do is we give you a visual representation of what it means to be in the present moment. So instead of saying, Parvin, distractions are going to happen. Just accept them and let them go. Now, because that's easier said than done, right now I'm going to give Parvin a visual feedback regarding her mindful state. So she'll see a lotus flower in the middle of the screen. Once she has her mind in the present moment, she's able to start opening the petal on the flower. If she starts thinking, when's my next appointment? Who do I have to call? What do I have to do after work? That petal starts to close. And she knows she has to bring herself back in order to continue. So we're coming out with a lot more mindfulness applications because that really is an area many of our clients want to enhance. And then motor skills, that's good if you are clumsy, you have more bumps, bruises, accidents than your peers. It helps with that mind-body coordination. So keep in mind, again, the reason we work on all of these foundational skills is so that we can improve executive function. And I forget who it was, but someone here mentioned that they want to improve emotion regulation. So that's a mental process within executive function. But it's not just one thing, right? It's a combination of skills. So, in order to improve emotion regulation, and again, you may have some tips and strategies you really want to use, but they seem to fall apart in the heat of the moment. In order to really improve emotion regulation, we first have to be able to improve your ability to pay attention to the entire situation, process all of the information, control your impulsivity so you're not just impulsively responding with the first emotion that comes to mind, staying in the present moment so that that internal dialogue doesn't derail you, and then memory so that you can draw on previous experiences and evaluate the best response. So you may not have considered that. When you think about strategies that you want to use personally or you'd like your child to use in order to help with emotion regulation, those strategies are great. But we have to also develop skills so that you can sustain your attention, process, control impulsivity, all of those cognitive skills. So every time you do a play attention session, you're not only developing cognitive control in each of those individual areas, but you're strengthening all of the mental processes within executive function. Now, many of you here may be thinking, I need all of them, or my clients need all of them. And that may be true. What I like to do usually is narrow it down, prioritize to our top 7. And so many of you may already know what you'd like to work on. You may have already been through assessments. I have lots of individuals who say, we've been through a neuropsych evaluation. We have a 23-page report. Now we need to know the plan, right? And so we can always look at prior assessments that you've done to help customize your plan. Or we do have an online assessment, which is just a questionnaire. And at the end of the questionnaire, you'll see which cognitive skills we recommend for your program or your clients or your child. If you want that ADHD test link that's online, just type in test and I will send that, or we'll send that to you in a follow-up, just so that you'll be able to review that and fill that out and see what cognitive skills, what your program would look like. Now, also, I had someone, Jennifer, yes, we'll send you the recording. Okay, I understand. Now, let me see. There was someone that I just spoke with, Karen. Karen, you asked about a baseline. So we can use that online test, but you may already use some type of assessment in your practice. We also have a couple of assessments that are optional. We have Focus, which is a norm reference test of attentional control. And at the end of that assessment, we get a full report. It takes 20 minutes. We get a full report that tells us how you performed compared to the performance of your peers. We look at 4 different constructs of attention. We look at consistency, performance, impulse control, and your ability to deal with distractors, both auditory and visual. So that is a CPT. It is a continuous performance test. It's data-driven, so it's more objective. We also have the brief available, which is a behavior rating inventory of executive function, and that is more subjective. It's based on your experiences or your observations. I often like to use all 3 in combination, so we get a really clear view. And Karen, you can use these as your pre, mid, and post evaluation if you want to use that. So many of you have typed in test. If you do want more information on those optional assessments because you want to get a little bit deeper, you can type in focus, but we'll be following up with you. But you can type in focus and I'll share those additional information on those assessments if you want more. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at, because we've talked a lot about the different components of play attention, but if you want either any of this information that I'm mentioning, please do type it in the chat box. I see some of you are using the raise your hand icon, but just keep in mind afterwards, we won't be able to see what you wanted. So please do make certain you type what you would like in the chat box, okay? Now, let's go ahead and look at what your daily program would look like, really, because we want to see what it's going to all involve. Now we know all the components, how they work together. Now, first, I want to review, because I said I would, what's involved with the summer cognitive campout, because everyone who starts their play attention program by June 2nd is going to be automatically enrolled in our campout. And that just comes with a lot of added benefits. So you'll have that customized curriculum for each family member. You'll have full access to our masterclass suite. So you're not just going to receive the 6 core cognitive exercises, but all of the additional modules as well. And that's both for home clients and professional clients. If you are going to be doing the home system, instead of having a user license for 2 people, you're going to have an upgraded user license for 4 family members. You can always upgrade that. The additional user licenses are just $50 to enroll more family members. The professional version comes with an unlimited user license. You'll have a private kickoff kickoff session with your dedicated focus coach to get everyone on the same page. We take you through an onboarding, which is your practice session to make sure you're real comfortable with everything. And you'll have ongoing consistency coaching. So at the end of your onboarding, then your coach is going to say, okay, um, Francisco, how am I going to keep you on track? Is it a Zoom meeting once a week for 15 minutes? Is it a text message 4 days a week? Is it an email? So your coach is going to say, what do you need from us? How are we going to keep you on track? And so that is something that you'll do with your coach. And then we're also going to send out weekly focus activities that are just simply supplements, out things you can do that some summer activities um, outside of your play attention exercises. So the very first thing, we're going to, of course, ship that body wave armband to you, and you're going to meet with your tech advisor, and that person's going to make certain that you have everything set up correctly. And then just do a quick communications test. Then you're going to meet with your focus coach to do your onboarding. So that person is going to take you through a practice session just to make sure you're real comfortable with everything before you get started. So you're going to have a full onboarding. Now, once you do your onboarding, we do recommend that you work at least an hour per week. Okay. And that hour per week can be broken up. And so if you're a professional client, most of our professionals do two 30-minute sessions with their clients. If you're working at home, you could break that up. You could do 4 15-minute sessions, whatever works best for you. So you want to know that you'll be doing at least an hour per week, but break those sessions up. And you can, as I mentioned, train as a family or in a professional setting. Now, you'll also have access to your full reports. So when you start your session, let's say, I'm just going to just pop back here. When you start your play attention session, let's just say you decided to do a four 15-minute sessions. So when you log in, Sheer Genius is going to select 3 different exercises for that day based on previous performance. So you log in, Sheer Genius will say, okay, today we're going to work on attention stamina, time on task, and working memory. Not only that, you'll have 3 mini goals, a mini goal for each activity. And then, so you'll log in, you'll do your 3 exercises, you log out, there's a journal, time for reflection, what I did well, what I'm proud of, and then you're done for the day. So the next day you log in, 3 new exercises, 3 new mini goals, log out, journal, done. That's kind of the process you'll get into. You'll start to see good results after about 6 weeks of consistent training. But the research shows in order to gain permanency, in order for us to know that not only will you have these skills now, but you'll have them throughout your lifetime, that usually takes about 40 hours total. So if you're working that hour per week, I would plan on about 10 months of consistent training. So around that 10-month period, you're going to again meet with your coach, and then we're going to make certain you're at all the advanced skill options, make certain everything's transferred and generalized. If everything looks good, we start graduating from the program. If it looks like there's more work to be done, we simply customize the plan and we keep going. What's important for you to remember is you own the program. Your support is unlimited. So whether it takes you 10 months or 16 months, it really doesn't matter. We continue working as long as necessary. And even once you graduate the program, if you want to continue using it for peak performance, like I have some colleagues here who use it in the beginning of the day, if they have a big presentation that day. I have one colleague who uses it before he goes out on the tennis court. You can use it in the beginning of a new school year to help with transition, whatever it may be. You can continue using play attention. But it's important to realize there is a point where you've created those new neural pathways to a point of permanency. So just keep that in mind in order to get those outcomes, in order for all of you to reach your goals that you wrote about when we first started. You want to do that consistent training, keep in touch with your focus coach, and make certain that you do your training about an hour per week, and then meet with your coach again along the way, of course, to help you stay consistent, but then when we're looking at graduation. I mentioned earlier that the home system typically comes with a user license for 2 family members. Remember, the home system right now with our cognitive campout comes standard with 4 user licenses, and we will customize a plan for each. You do not have to have a deficit in these areas to improve your personal skills. So if you just want to improve your personal skills and use play attention as peak performance and do the family camp out together, that's a great idea. The professional system comes with an unlimited user license with no reoccurring fees. So if you want to enroll 25 clients tomorrow, you can enroll all 25 and there's never any relicensing fee. So that's really the only difference between the home system and the professional system. Now, the home system is a one-time fee, which is $18.95, and the professional system is again a one-time fee, which is $25.95. When you start your program before June 2nd, you'll have that whole bundle that we mentioned, all of those bonuses included in your package at no additional cost. If you do have an HSA or an FSA, those typically do cover. Also, there are payment plans available through Shop Pay. Yes, we are recording this, so I will send you those recordings. Just remember, I just see a lot of people who are asking about that. So those are your two different options. Again, if you have an HSA or an FSA, those typically will cover, and Shop Pay does do payment plans. Everyone who enrolls will be able to take advantage of that summer camp out as well. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I look forward to seeing you all at a future consultation or a future webinar as well. Thanks so much.